The next bill we have on the agenda is House File 1842. Chair Wagenius, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, I would like to move House File 1842 be returned to the Committee on Ways and Means with a recommendation that it be referred to the Government Operations Committee.
Representative Wagenius moves her bill. Representative Wagenius, you have a DE amendment coded DE1. Would you like to move that amendment?
Yes, this is a delete all, and I would move the DE1 to get the bill in the shape that I would like it.
Representative moves the DE1 amendment to get it in the shape she requests. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Wagenius, you also have an author's amendment coded A20.
I do have an author's amendment where we had to do some technical amendments and make sure that all the accounts balanced, and so I would move A20.
Representative Wagenius moves the A20 amendment to get the bill in the shape she would like. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Wagenius, please tell us about your bill.
Members, you've seen most of, actually all of this bill before. What is different are some of the numbers. This is a bill we passed last year, spending the money in the Renewable Development account. Since then, a couple of things have changed. And the big one is that we are fully funding in this bill.
Senator Wagenius, could you maybe pull the mic up? Thank you.
Okay. We're fully funding in this bill the request by Prairie Island community. And so with that, we had to reduce some of the numbers in some of the other categories. We also have some new language from the Prairie Island community, but you heard this language last week. So there is not a lot new here, some new numbers, but conceptually, it's very much what you saw 2 years ago or last year and passed the House floor. So with that, I think we should hear from some community members that signed up to talk about the bill.
We had 6 people sign up for public testimony. If it's all right with members, we'll go forward with public testimony and then do discussion afterwards. Crystal Johnson is up first, and on deck is Greg Mast. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Crystal Johnson. I'm the city manager for Granite Falls. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we have a potential project that we're respectfully asking as you move through this process to take in consideration and adding to this bill. We feel we have a unique project for an opportunity of one-time funding with RDA funds for a carbon-free, pollution-free, fuel-free, renewable electric generation project that is hydro generation within the community of Granite Falls. This stems from a current retirement in place of XL Minnesota's Valley coal-fired plant that has, as a result, caused some financial hardships to our community. And I know I only just have a few minutes, so there is a handout with some additional information, and otherwise I will stand for questions.
Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the chair for being so quick in hearing a Republican bill today. I really appreciate that. So. No, this is my bill that we're moving forward. I just would speak in positivity towards it. This is a critical infrastructure. It's a unique place that is essentially on the shores of 2 different House districts, two different Senate districts in southwest Minnesota. It's obviously, this is a part of a larger project. The city of Granite Falls has had a large, their operation with XL has a large place that has closed down, and so this plays a supplemental role in the rest of energy production within the city. So appreciate the chair listening to this and the other members of the committee. Thank you.
I don't see further questions. Thank you for your testimony. Greg Mast, and then following Greg is Brendan Jordan.
Good morning, Chairman Long and members of the committee. My name is Greg Mast, and I'm the Executive Director of Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. We are a nonpartisan, industry-led nonprofit organization dedicated to growing and strengthening Minnesota's clean energy business ecosystem. And our membership is comprised of over 40 clean energy companies that range from startup businesses to Fortune 100 and 500 corporations who employ thousands of Minnesotans across the state. Simply put, we are the business voice for clean energy. And today I'm here to testify in support of House File 1842. And I'd like to thank Representative Wagenius and members of the committee for bringing this bill forward and for the work that's been put into this proposal. This bill supports strategic investments that will help fuel the important transition to a clean, affordable, and reliable energy system while unleashing additional economic opportunities and jobs across our state. And in particular, I'd like to voice specific support for the Solar Energy Incentive Program. As interest in solar from energy consumers continues to grow, the Solar Energy Incentive Program plays a vital role in expanding the availability of solar to Minnesotans. We appreciate the allocation of funding proposed in the bill and the additional economic activity and jobs that will flow from the continuation of this successful program. In terms of economic impacts, Minnesota is currently home to over 61,000 clean energy jobs, and this number continues to grow. Stable and predictable policies paired with advances in technology are making solar an attractive investment across the state. And today, over 4,000 Minnesotans work in our solar industry, and these jobs have grown over 117% since 2015. And there are 4 times as many solar jobs in the industry today than just a decade ago, according to recent data from the Solar Foundation. And over the past year, solar installer has been the fastest growing job here in Minnesota, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So in closing, the provisions in this bill for the Solar Energy Incentive Program provides the needed certainty that our solar businesses rely upon to further invest and grow here in Minnesota and will expand the marketplace for clean energy solutions. Building on the success of the program will also provide our state with a competitive advantage while spurring the creation of additional jobs and economic opportunities for Minnesotans. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Mast. Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have or could you direct me to where I could find the average wage of these 61,000 workers, particularly the installers, as that's the fastest growing?
Chairman Long,
Mr. Mast.
Representative Mahoney, I'd be happy to pass along the reference from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and then there's also a Department of Energy study that we can share with you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Representative Służynski.
Thank you, Chair Long. This question is just a general one. Does the community solar gardens, do they qualify for the solar rewards program? You know?
Mr. Mast.
Chairman Long, Representative Służynski, there is a community, a solar rewards community program, but specifically within this bill, what I have outlined that we are supportive of is for the funding that's allocated to the solar rewards program, specific to rooftop solar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mast. Brendan Jordan. And then on deck is Braden Solon.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Brendan Jordan with the Great Plains Institute. I represent a coalition called Drive Electric Minnesota. Drive Electric Minnesota includes automotive dealerships, manufacturers, electric utilities, including investor-owned municipal and rural electric cooperatives, EV owners, and a number of environmental nonprofit organizations. Today, electric vehicles are a relatively small part of our transportation system, but it will grow, and there's a lot of exciting things happening in the state today. Includes manufacturing of electric buses, robotics manufacturing facility in the North Metro. It includes a lot of exciting work by communities around the state, electric utilities, and others. What the state lacks today is a policy framework to provide that catalytic early support to help the industry grow and to really attract a lot of the potential outside investment that is going into other states. Drive Electric Minnesota's policy committee is very supportive of the electric vehicle provisions that are part of House File 1842, including electric vehicle rebate program, investments in transit and school bus electrification, the EV dealership grants, and additional investments in public charging. We believe these are the kind of investments that will accelerate the adoption of EVs and really lead to more jobs and investment in the state of Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Next is Braden Solom, and following Braden is David Schaefer.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, good morning. My name is Braden Solomon. I'm a partner at Ideal Energies. We're a commercial solar development company based here in Minneapolis, and we develop projects for both the public and private sector across the state of Minnesota for Minnesota customers. And I'm here today to voice my support for House File 1842, specifically the Solar Incentive Program piece of the bill. The Solar Awards Program, since its inception, has supported the rapid growth of the residential and small commercial sector of the Minnesota solar industry. The participating solar array installations in this program are installed on Minnesota homes, schools, government buildings, nonprofits, and businesses, passing these incentives and savings on to them. To give you a little bit of perspective on that, about half of our company's business is done with schools, cities, and counties. Just speaking of schools specifically, we've done about 100 buildings so far around the state under this program, saving our public sector a lot of money. With the rapid decline of the commercial solar investment tax credit and the expiration of the residential tax credit, it is now more important than ever that programs like solar awards are expanded and continued to help maintain the rapid growth of our industry. When the Made in Minnesota program was revealed in 2017, this program's predecessor, our industry was left without a solution for a majority of the marketplace for residential and small commercial solar. And the Solar Awards program was subsequently expanded slightly to help make up for this. We commend the legislature's work to replace a portion of the Made in Minnesota funding that was lost with that repeal. This bill, though, would make our industry whole again. By expanding the funding in the term of the program to 2024, we are replenishing a portion of the Made in Minnesota funding, and the time frame of the program is now in line with the original time frame of the Made in Minnesota program, which the industry formed around in Minnesota. Also, the rollover language included in the bill is very important because it will allow the industry to rely on funding allocated to the program to help mitigate delays and inefficiencies we have experienced when working with the utility to interconnect and apply for our projects that has historically hindered our ability to use the full program funding in a given year. Ultimately, the increase in funding and the expanded timeline for the program will give our industry the opportunity to continue to hire Minnesota workers and deliver projects to Minnesota customers across the public and private sector, saving Minnesotans money across the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Mecklen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Representative Mahoney's question, do you know what these installers are paid, like an hourly rate?
It really depends. I'd have to get back to you on it. I definitely could get you an answer on that question if you want my contact information.
Sounds
Chair,
like you can follow up offline. Representative Mecklen.
Do you support the prevailing wage?
We do support the prevailing wage. What we found in the state of Minnesota is that demand for solar installers is so high across the board that we end up paying beyond prevailing wage for our installers. With just the rapid growth of the industry and the fact that the fastest growing job title in the state is solar installers, and the required electrician work on solar systems, electricians are in extremely high demand. So we find ourselves paying very high wages to our solar installers.
Representative Mecklen.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So I guess I have a two-part question. Do you do rooftop solar, one, and two, the folks that are installing the rooftop solar, are they specifically trained, or do they go through some kind of training curriculum so that they're doing it the right way based on the roof systems that they possibly are penetrating?
Mr. Solon.
So we do No residential rooftop. We do commercial rooftop solar. But our installers are extensively trained. They're card-carrying electricians, apprentices, journeymen, and master electricians. Our state has rules around who can install solar. So you need to have master electricians on site with journeyman electricians and apprentices. So it's a pretty strict regimen. And just because our company's quality control level is really high, we make sure that everybody knows exactly what they're doing.
Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Chairman, to the testifier, could you just outline for members of the committee, you mentioned that the federal solar subsidies are going away. Can you just talk about the glide path of when those are expiring and at what percentages?
Mr. Solom.
Yeah, Representative Garofalo, the tax credit last year was at 30% for commercial solar I'm speaking about. This year it's 26%, next year it's 22%, and then in 10% in perpetuity there, moving forward, unless that is changed. It is my understanding, I'm not a residential developer, but it is my understanding that the residential tax credit expires at the end of this year.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Garofalo.
That's correct. And I just wanted to, because Made in Minnesota was brought up, I think some members of the committee may not be familiar with that program. While it was well-intentioned when it was created, I think there was a bipartisan recognition that that program was a complete disaster. $150 million, we would have been better off setting the money on fire and keeping our hands warm with it as opposed to how that money was spent. And so there was bipartisan recognition that we should repeal that. As part of that repeal, we actually did take, as the testifier mentioned, we did expand the solar rewards program for the residential industry, a program that at that time was, it was supported by.
Nobody's moving fast enough.
Yeah. Said, you shut it off? How appropriate, you didn't like my comments, huh?
That's all.
I've heard opposition to my comments, but I've never shut the lights off before. But Madam Chair, we did, or Mr. Chairman, and to the testifier, we did put extra money into solar rewards to account for that. So I'm not sure I understand the rationale for why we should be continuing to subsidize that. But an open-ended question that doesn't require an answer now would maybe be if advocates of the solar rewards program could tell us when they think it is appropriate for it to expire, when that program will be able to go away. That's just an open-ended comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think our next testifier may be able to speak to that. Representative Swazinski.
My question was kind of like, so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Solom. David Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm David Schaefer, Executive Director of the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. We represent about 110 different solar companies in the state of Minnesota, and somewhere between 25 and 30 would directly benefit from this bill. So I'm here to voice my support for House File 1842. There's three provisions of this bill that we support. The first is the solar rewards provision, as Greg and Braden mentioned. The next is the solar on schools portion, and then the last is the solar in schools, or solar in parks allocation for $3.5 million. As far as the solar rewards program goes, it's the biggest fund for residential and small commercial in the state. So many of our members rely on this incentive program to continue to operate in the state. It results in hundreds of jobs that are good paying jobs and would allow us to install more than several thousands of rooftop jobs each year on a go-forward basis. The most important reason for why we need to continue the solar rewards program is the step down of the investment tax credit. But another really important element here, and something that Representative Garofalo was going to, was the repeal of the Made in Minnesota program. So I guess I'll get to his sort of generic question here, which is, I think at the time that the transition occurred between Made in Minnesota and solar rewards, there was a belief that over time, the rate of solar would drop down to a point where no subsidy was needed, and perhaps quicker than is turning out to be reality. What we found in that program is this program originally started at about 8 cents a kilowatt hour and has dropped down to 7 over several years. By the time that drops down to 0, we will be presumably without any need for further subsidy, but at the moment, we're still far away from that mark. And so as solar continues to decline in costs, I do expect that incentive level to go down, but we're not there yet today. I'm optimistic that with the passage of this bill, we can get closer to that and hopefully won't have to come back and ask for more money in the future. But that will be dependent on the price declines of solar modules as well as the workforce. As far as the Solar on Schools bill is concerned, we support this bill heavily. We've been working on it for several years here. One of the benefits of Solar on Schools that's you can't get by just having schools enter the solar rewards program is schools have a very large electric load. So allowing them to build systems that are much bigger than 40 kilowatts helps the schools save money on their electric bills, which then can be returned to the taxpayers through reduced property tax incentives or reduced property taxes. This would help open up a new market segment in the state and would lead to more clean energy jobs. And finally, I'll just mention on the solar and parks allocation, we've gone to several parks. They're really great educational opportunities for people that drive in to get experience with solar. They're usually very visible, and we support the further expansion of those. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Is there anybody else who wants to testify to the bill? Not seeing anybody. Any discussion to the bill before we get to amendments? I don't see any either. Well, then we will move on to amendments. The first amendment is coded A19. This is my amendment, so I will move it. And the amendment takes two good ideas from Representative Stevenson's bill for the electric vehicle rebate program. It includes leased vehicles in the rebate program, and it includes additional supplemental rebate for low-income participants.
I recommend
Chair
a yes
Wagenius?
vote.
Any discussion to my amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A4 Amendment. Representative Stevenson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is my amendment. I'd move the A4. This amendment adds a prevailing wage requirement to a number of provisions in the bill that relate to construction. And I think we had a little discussion about prevailing wage a minute ago, but I think prevailing wage is very important policy that the state has in its toolbox, and I think it's appropriate to have it in this bill and would be beneficial to have it in this bill. So I'd ask for committee members' support.
Chair Wagenius.
I recommend a yes vote, please.
Any discussion to the amendment? Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for members of the committee who may not be reading along in the bill, it says 177.30 and 171.41 to 177.45. Can nonpartisan staff or the author of the amendment just cover what sections of law those mean?
Mr. Eliff.
Mr. Chair, Representative Garofalo, this is not an area of law I'm particularly familiar with. I do know 177.30 is a record-keeping requirement with respect to wages. 171.41 to 45 includes prevailing wage statute itself, as well as provisions that relate to overtime for workers, both on a daily and weekly basis. And that pretty much wraps up my knowledge of these areas, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Garofalo.
I see that the chair of the Jobs Committee is not present, but I'm wondering if the author of the amendment or the author of the bill have spoken with the chairman of the Jobs Committee. With the inclusion of this amendment, it would seem that this bill would need to go to his committee for review. Have you had any conversations with Chairman Mahoney?
Chair Wagenius.
I have not.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stevenson, Representative Mahoney seems to have just left the room for some reason. So, any
Representative Stevenson.
Representative Garofalo, Mr. Chair, Representative Garofalo, I have spoken to him about the issue of prevailing wage. I have not spoken to him about whether this will require another committee stop.
Mr. Chairman and
Representative Garofalo.
to the author of the bill, 177.30,
Would you get
171.40.
closer to your mic? You're further away than I am.
I am not loud enough. I am not loud enough.
We'll fix that.
No, but Madam Chair, the sections in the subdivision 10, subdivision 3, those do seem to be outside the purview of our committee. I'm just wondering, do you have an opinion on whether this bill, should we include this amendment, whether it should go to the Jobs Committee or not?
Chair Wagenius.
We will check with the chair of the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A4 say aye. Aye. All opposed? The amendment prevails. Next, we have the A10 amendment. Is that going to be offered? Representative Michelin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, A10 amendment basically is shifting a few of the dollars around from the RDA fund to fund the Becker Industrial Park. As we've heard, this request has been before this committee for years now, and then we recently saw in the last, a month ago, not even, we ran out of water when we really needed it the most. And then the further catalyst, as we all are aware, since about a year ago or more, Google has expressed great interest in moving to Minnesota and being a 100% renewable company, and with a $600 million private investment. So I would hope you would find this amendment favorable, Madam Chair.
Chair Wagenius.
Well, thank you, members. It doesn't take a small amount from solar awards or from the electric vehicle rebates. It takes a substantial portion to create a business park. That's an inappropriate use of the money, and a business park would be an appropriate use of bonding dollars, and I suggest that you go to the bonding committee. With that, I would recommend a no vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the amendment coded A10, the chair recommends a no vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
The amendment does not prevail. Is the A11 amendment being offered?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this.
Representative Swazinski.
Yes, I move the A11 amendment. The XL Energy folks have a proposal before the PUC that talks essentially about the shouldering, where they'll be potentially shutting off seasonally their coal-fired plants. And there was some conversations about added costs because of that. That would be directly related to that. That would potentially get passed on to ratepayers. And this would actually, I think, make some common sense that if there is costs associated with that shouldering, which would obviously lower the use of coal within the state over a period of time during the spring and the fall, that any potential cost because of that, kind of a unique idea, would be help be covered through this account. This would set aside, essentially create a reserve account of $10 million to offset any costs associated with that, so that those costs wouldn't be passed on to ratepayers. Because of where the dollars are generated from ratepayers, and because this actually reduces CO2 potentially or other things, that we think this is a common sense use of this dollar so that we can incentivize this program if it's going to work, but also insulate ratepayers from any costs that might be associated with it. And I'd ask for your support.
Chair Wagenius.
Yes, members, this amendment takes $5 million from the electric vehicle rebates and takes the equal amount from the Met Council electric buses to put in an account that's unlikely to, it's just likely to sit there and do nothing. And with that, I would recommend a no vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recommends a no vote. All those in favor of the A11 say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. The amendment does not prevail. The A12 amendment, is that being offered? Representative Bo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the A12 amendment. This amendment appropriates $5 million from the RDA to fund the research into nuclear power alternatives. And really, this was the original purpose of the RDA, and I like the thought of getting back to this original intent.
Chair Wagenius.
Yes, well, A12 it makes the account out of balance, and I would ask members to vote no.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the chair recommends a no vote. All those in favor of A12 say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The amendment is not adopted. We are on the A20. Is that being offered? Excuse me, the A15.
No, A15 is being withdrawn, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is the A16 being offered?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the A16
Representative
amendment.
Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment imposes a lifetime $10 million cap on the payments associated with each cask stored at the nuclear power plant. This amendment will save XL ratepayers, your constituents, and mine, tens of millions of dollars. So folks, if you're looking, obviously, the stock market's taken a bit of bump with issues internationally that we have. This will directly put dollars into the pockets of your constituents. This will drive buying, this will drive the paying of school loans, this will drive many different things just by simply, we're recognizing the fact that there are potentially external costs to those casks, but we are setting a reality. We're letting XL ratepayers know that we care about them and their finances. Setting a cap on this cask at $10 million over the lifetime of that cask, I think encourages the federal government to find a solution. But also gives the folks that live in each and all of our districts some relief from the overburdensome costs that are unending with this particular program. And I'd ask for your support and a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Chair Wagenius.
Yes, thank you. This breaches a contract made between Xcel Energy and the state of Minnesota on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota, who now have nuclear wastes on the shores of the Mississippi River. And it appears that that waste is going to be here for a long, long time, and if not permanently. So I recommend a no vote. We do not breach contracts.
Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Chairman and members, I don't know what information is public on this matter or not, but it's timely that this amendment is before us because, and I don't know if it's public or not, but hundreds of jobs were lost in the East Metro this week. And they were lost, one of the reasons why is because of high energy prices. I think if the press release hasn't gone out on it, it will very shortly. But for years, we have pointed out that high energy prices kill jobs. They do not create jobs. And we're seeing the consequences of that now with energy-intensive industries beginning the process of leaving the state of Minnesota, exporting their pollution to other states where where their energy systems are less clean, because we are simply refusing to acknowledge the high cost structure that we have. There is no contract, Representative Wagenius, there is no contract on this. The idea that no changes to the renewable development account could ever be made is with fiction, it's without fact. In fact, you yourself made changes to that contract with Representative Healthy when you increased the fees. You increased the cask fees to an annual assessment as opposed to a per cask allotment historically. Likewise, the Monticello casks were never part of any such agreement. There was no contract. So the idea that we can only make changes to the RDA when the DFL supports it, and that's supporting the contract, but that any time we do something to advocate for the ratepayers, well, that's a breaking of a contract is just without merit. Again, members, we are the only state in the country that penalizes energy producers for creating carbon-free electricity. We're the only state that specifically targets nuclear power with a specific cask tax. This money does not go to Xcel Energy. It doesn't go to the shareholders. This is simply an add-on that every single ratepayer in the state and those energy-intensive industries are paying for. And I would ask members to support this bill, this amendment that Representative Swazinski is offering. It is a modest reduction in what we are seeing to offset the high costs of community solar and other government-imposed mandates on ratepayers. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call has been requested. The clerk will take the roll. The chair recommends a no vote.
Representative Wagenius.
No.
Representative Long.
No.
Representative Swazinski.
Yes.
Representative Acom.
No.
Representative Baker. Representative Bierman.
No.
Representative Bowe. Representative Christensen.
No.
Representative Garofalo.
Yes.
Representative Hornstein.
No.
Representative Jordan.
No.
Representative Mahoney. Representative Meckland. Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Stevenson.
No.
being 5 ayes and 8 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Members, we're trying to get the A14 amendment printed and around to folks, so if you're wondering why, that should be coming back. The A14 amendment we're getting printed. Oh, gotcha. Oh, is that pulled? Oh,
Yep, I'm going to
thank
pull
you.
A21.
That makes it easier. We are on the A21 amendment, if that is being offered.
I'm going to
Representative,
withdraw the A21 amendment.
A21 is withdrawn. And we're on the A22.
Yeah.
Is that being offered?
Yes,
Representative
thank you, Mr. Chair. This was kind of along the same lines of what we offered. It was taken as a friendly amendment in the last bill that we heard, and wanted to see if we could potentially include that in this language as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now, I thought
Chair Wagenius.
it was actually the same language, not along the same lines. Is it different?
No, I think it is the same language, yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, if it's the same language, I would recommend a yes vote.
The chair recommends a yes vote. Is there further discussion on the A22? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A22 say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The amendment is adopted. We are now on the A5 amendment. Is the A5 being moved? Representative Swazinski?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair, sorry. Representative Wagenius. This is along the same lines as the early amendment that was not accepted. It just limits to each vehicle and allows $500 rebates for used vehicles. We should limit the rebates for one per vehicle. So once, essentially, we're making the same point once again, that once we have a vehicle. Yeah.
This,
Am I on the wrong A5? Oh, sorry. I was looking at my other list of A5 amendment. Sorry to the committee. This amendment would require, so across the state, whenever state dollars are involved in putting in charging stations, that essentially we're going to treat them the same as we do here. We would ask that people pay for the electricity that's being offered, so that we're not buying gas or buying electricity for folks across the state, just asking them that they are charged for what they pay, what they're using. So appreciate your support.
Chair Wagenius.
I think it's a good amendment, and I would recommend a yes vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A5 say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The amendment is adopted. Members, I do not see further amendments. Is there further discussion to the bill? Representative Swazinski?
Just ask for a roll call.
Roll call has been requested on the bill. Any discussion to the bill? Chair Wagenius, any closing remarks?
I would renew my motion that House File 1842, as amended, be returned to the Committee on Ways and Means with a recommendation that it be referred to the Government Operations Committee.
Chair Wagenius renews her motion that House File 1842, as amended, be returned to the Committee on Ways and Means with a recommendation that it be referred to the Government Operations Committee. A roll call being requested. The clerk will take the roll.
Representative Wagenius?
Aye.
Representative Long?
Yes.
Representative Swazinski?
Nope.
Representative Acom?
Yes.
Representative Baker? Representative Bierman?
Yes.
Representative Bowe?
Yes.
Representative Christensen? Representative Garofalo?
No.
Representative Hornstein?
Yes.
Representative Jordan?
Yes.
Representative Mahoney? Representative Meckland?
No.
Representative Nelson?
No.
Representative Stevenson?
Yes.
There being 9 ayes and 4 nays, the motion prevails.